Good evening, everyone. It's 8 o'clock, so I think we'll get started. Um, Make sure everyone gets home again before it rains. It's really great to see you all here tonight. We had another session, as you know, on Tuesday, and it was well attended as well. And it's great to see members who care about the club and the future. So I'm just going to give you a little background on how we got here and talking about this master plan and introduce Jeff. It kind of started with just looking to improve the overall golf experience here at Cutton Fields. Also knowing that, some of the older infrastructure at the club and on the golf course was beginning to deteriorate, or we are anticipating it to in some cases. And just to give us a guiding light, if you will, we needed to develop a plan, a master plan. So the committee developed some terms of reference for us to follow in selecting an architect, and some terms of reference for the architect to follow in developing the master plan. So we interviewed a number of architects, and Jeff was the best suited for Cutton Fields and most qualified. He's got a great background with the history here, and as well has a lot of knowledge about Stanley Thompson, and he's actually the vice president of the Stanley Thompson Society currently. He works all across North America, a lot of work out west in Canada. He's been involved with Blackhawk, Cabot Links, Victoria Golf Club, and currently also Toronto Ladies Club. He's working on some things there. Just before Jeff gets started, as many of you know, we will be implementing, or even have some of these changes already in the fall with some teas, but we are planning on starting the changes, as you see there on 15, later on this spring, as soon as we can tidy up some projects from last fall, as well as just get the golf course open and ready for you guys to play. So here's Jeff.
Thanks, Bill. As Bill said, thanks everyone for coming out. We did have a good gathering on Tuesday afternoon as well, and I actually think that gathering sharpened me for this. So you're probably lucky you came to the second version of this rather than the first. This has been a really interesting experience, as Bill said. I do have, I kind of come at my work historically minded. I got into golf course architecture, studying the works of Stanley Thompson and a lot of the classic architects from, legendary architects now, from the 20s and 30s. And to get the call from Cutton Fields and have an opportunity to come and look at this place, knowing its history, knowing that Stanley Thompson at one point not only owned and operated the place, but actually lived adjacent to the 16th hole in Dormy House. It was a really exciting opportunity for me. And also, as I mentioned on Tuesday, a really exciting opportunity to come and work with Bill. I've known Bill for years. Well, he was at the Toronto Golf Club to start with, and Bill's one of the most enthusiastic and historically minded, and a superintendent who's more interested in golf course architecture than most superintendents that I deal with. So Bill comes with a lot of ammunition as well. So we've got a pretty good team put together. And speaking of teams, you're looking at an August 2018 draft of this master plan. On Tuesday, Bill reminded me that this whole process started in 2016. So we're 3 years down the road getting to what you're looking at on this screen, which is always an important process, right? I come in, I look at the golf course, I think about it, then I pitch all my ideas, my thoughts, my recommendations to committees, to boards, to management. And we've gone through, I estimated or guesstimated on Tuesday that I think this is about the fourth or fifth rendition of this plan based on my preliminary thoughts, committee, board input, management input, Bill's input. So again, having that team come into this and develop what we're looking at here, I think has been a really good process and is going to serve the club really well moving forward. So that being said, you know, I always have to answer this question: why does a golf club need a golf course master plan? Whenever I come to clubs similar to Cutton Fields with an older golf course, club has a lot of history, been around a long time. You know, most people like what they have. You tee off tomorrow and it's fine, right? But a lot of times it's fine because guys like Bill and his staff are putting Band-Aids on a lot of things, right? Before you tee off, they've already been out there for hours pumping out bunkers that don't drain and doing all kinds of important work to present the golf course that the way that you want it to be presented when you get out and play. The best analogy I can make is you can compare a golf course to a home. You know, if you have a home that's 50 years old or 70 years old or 80 years old, you know, eventually you're going to need to replace the roof. Something's going to happen to the plumbing. The wiring's going to have problems, et cetera, et cetera. Golf course is no different when you think about trees, bunkers, drainage, grass types change. It's actually a perfect analogy. So the whole reason and the whole importance of a golf course master plan is essentially to enhance the overall experience for all golfers. You know, a club like this just wants to make sure that, as Bill said in his introduction, that there's a roadmap and a guiding light, as Bill said, to ensure that that you're doing the things that need to be done to make sure that the experience of golfing at Cutton Fields is the best that it can be. Secondly, along similar lines, you know, again, as the golf course ages, even if we did everything we needed to do to make the golf course the best it can be tomorrow, you know, the golf course is still going to continue in that aging process. So we want to do things that are going to put the club in the most advantageous position it can be in to deal with similar challenges and new challenges as time passes. So what do we want to achieve with this plan? First and foremost, we want to improve the function of the golf course. We want to put Bill, we want to put future superintendents in the best position that they can be in to make sure that the greens are in the best shape they can be in, the fairways are the best shape, the bunkers drain, the sand quality is good. Playability, which is what we in the architecture world call the ideal in golf course architecture. This relates to function as well. And what the ideal in golf architecture is you want to have a golf course that challenges low handicap players, challenges better players, but at the same time allows everyone to enjoy the course. You know, I've used this example Tuesday, and I always use it. The old course at St. Andrews in Scotland is the best example of the ideal in golf course architecture, because the same day that they play the British Open, high handicaps, older people, kids can go out on the old course and play the entire golf course with a putter. Very difficult to achieve, but that's always in our minds as we're trying to improve these older golf courses. How do we challenge the best, but at the same time allow the rest to enjoy it? And again, that's part of the function of a golf course as well. Thirdly, we want to, especially in a situation like Cutton Fields, we want to restore elements of a very, very distinctive golf course design. Again, I come at this very historically minded. These two gentlemen, who are not arguably two of the most important people in the history of golf, Chick Evans and Stanley Thompson, collaborated on this golf course design. In the early, in the 19s, prior to Bobby Jones, Chick Evans was the greatest amateur golfer in the world. He was the first amateur golfer to win the U.S. Amateur and U.S. Open. He was the biggest star in golf, again, in the prior to Bobby Jones. Stanley Thompson, we all know his history. I'm sure everyone in this room knows all about Stanley Thompson. He still is the benchmark for everything we do in golf course architecture in Canada. And he never collaborated with anyone on another golf course design and construction project, as far as I know. Here, Arthur Cutton, the founder of this club, brought Chick Evans from Chicago, who he was actually a patron of Chick Evans. He, promoted Chick Evans, gave Chick Evans money to travel around North America and the world to play amateur golf tournaments. When he wanted to found this club and build this golf course, he brought Chick Evans to Guelph. Somehow or another, it's a long history. Mr. Hubert probably knows more than me, but somehow or another, Stanley Thompson and Chick Evans ended up collaborating on this golf course design, which resulted in a lot of interesting features that do not feature on other Stanley Thompson golf courses. And one of the most important things about golf, another analogy I always use is if we played tennis in Guelph or we play hockey in Guelph, we're playing on the same court and the same rink than we would if we were playing tennis or hockey in Vancouver, right? We'd be on a hockey rink in Vancouver. We couldn't tell if we were in Guelph or Vancouver. The most important thing about golf and the best courses in the world is they're all distinct, right? They're all different. And that's what makes us want to travel to different courses and play different courses, because they're all different. And again, one of the coolest things about Cutton Fields, when you look at Stanley Thompson's body of work, there's a lot of consistency in Stanley Thompson's work. There's a 6th hole at St. George's in Toronto. That particular hole has a lot of Stanley Thompson-esque. It's very Stanley Thompson-esque. The bunkers have a Stanley Thompson shape. The setting of that hole is very Stanley Thompson, which is great. But again, Chick Evans, in the research that we've done through reading about the history, looking at old aerials, studying the old plans, knowing where Chick Evans came from, knowing where Stanley Thompson came from, again, studying the history of Cutton Fields, there's a difference between this golf course and most of the golf courses in most other of the best golf courses in Stanley Thompson's portfolio. Looking at this old aerial, I always joke around. It's my favorite joke. Nobody ever laughs, but I say this is why it's called Cutton Fields and not Cutton Woods, right? That's a very open golf course compared to what we see today. But again, there's a lot of features out here. Very rectangular shaped greens. This is the your current 13th green, back when it was a par 4. Before, I always forget the name of the street. Gordon. Well, it's still a par 4. True, good point. But this is before Gordon cut in. This is the location of the original 15th green here up on the hill. But again, Gordon cut all that off. 16 became shorter. 13 is a par 3 now, and 15 green is somewhere in this vicinity with a tee back up top here. 14 green there. But again, you look at a lot of features in these old aerials and on Thompson's original plan, and again, they're very, very different from what is typical of Stanley Thompson. One of the biggest things that I've learned in my research is the Chicago Golf Club influence. As I mentioned, Chick Evans grew up, played golf in Chicago, lived in Chicago. His favorite golf course was the Chicago Golf Club. Chicago Golf Club is historically always in the top 25 golf courses in the world, ranked in the top 25 golf courses in the world. This is the 7th hole at Chicago. It's the Redan hole. I won't go into what a Redan is, but it's a very, very famous hole. But again, very geometric shaped features. The front of the green here, very straight, not rounded off. Grass face bunkers, flat bottoms. Again, a lot of Chicago Golf Club influence when you look at the history and the old photographs and plans for Cutton Fields. This is a photo of the 18th hole here, and you could see grass down, flat sand bunkers. Very different than what you have now. I think your last bunker renovation at the club here was 2005. 2005. So the bunkers have changed since the original design. And again, it's very interesting to see, these Chicago Golf Club / Chick Evans type influences at certain holes out here at Cutton Fields. Here's another example. This is your 18th green, and now look at how rectangular the shape of the green is. Right, nowadays it's more of an oval, and that happens a lot on older golf courses. Sometimes it's blatant redesign, but other times it's an interesting phenomenon actually when people go out to mow putting greens. They don't want to make their boss like Bill upset, so they tend not to scalp the collars, right? So if every day you try not to hit that collar with that mower blade by a fraction of an inch, you multiply that fraction of an inch by 30, 40, 50, 60 years, greens have a tendency to shrink. And another part of that phenomenon is that in the 60s, I think it was the 60s, they started to introduce riding mowers for greens rather than push mowers. Push mowers can accommodate these tighter corners and these more interesting shapes. Ride mowers have much longer turning radiuses. So when riding mowers came into vogue, a lot of these interesting green shapes, these old-fashioned historic green shapes really changed. And we don't know for sure how these changed at Cut and Fields, but those are the things that influence these types of changes on golf courses. Here's a really cool drone photo of your third green. And this is something that Bill's done in recent years since I've become involved. We talked a lot about this. This is very, very Chicago Golf Club-esque. If you go back to Chicago here, they've got these big fill pads, they call them, where the dirt was pushed up to build these greens. And back in the day, back in the 20s and 30s, if they made the effort, I know how hard it is to use a bulldozer to push up that dirt nowadays. If they made the effort in the 20s to push up these big fill pads, they did it for a particular reason, and that was to accommodate the putting surface. And when I first got here, you can still see it if you've got decent vision here. You can still see where the old green turned into an oval here. But the actual fill pad that they had pushed up was this big rectangular square that was, again, very much like Chicago. So Bill and his guys have pushed out that green. A lot of benefits to doing that. One, very distinctive shape. I mean, this is like nothing you're ever going to see in Ontario. There aren't greens like this in Ontario. Very, very distinctive to the design of Cut and Fields. Secondly, the greens are very small here. They really are. 25,000 rounds you guys do, and within about 6 months. That's a lot of rounds for a golf course this size. Bill reminded me again the other day on Tuesday that you've got less than 90,000 square feet of green surface. Just to put that in layman's terms, anything under 100,000 these days on a golf course that does 25,000 rounds is considered very small. And by very small, I mean there's not a lot of room to spread wear and tear. So the traffic that's concentrated in areas like take 14 green, for example. When that green gets up, you all know it better than me, but when that green gets up rolling over 12 feet on the stimp meter, I think there might be one pin, right? So when two, but it's fast and there's not a lot of spots to put it. So what happens when you can't move the pin around a lot? It puts a lot of stress on that turf and a lot of stress on your maintenance crew. So growing or expanding the greens as much as you can to restore pin positions and be able to move that traffic around the green, and also create a variety of holes. One day the pin's in the front right, next day the pin's in the back left. I mean, that's fun when the hole's different. But again, from a functional standpoint, it really helps as well with the maintenance and the turf health. So, well, it's pouring outside. So on Tuesday, it was really good. We opened it up. We will open this room up to questions as well, but in a minute. But we had some really pointed questions about certain areas of the golf course that I'm actually highlighting tonight. Here we take a look at the first hole and the 18th hole, which highlights a lot of the things. I just gave you an overview about what we're trying to achieve. These two holes highlight a lot about what we're trying to achieve with the master plan. First of all, distinctive features. In Stanley Thompson's original design, and you can see that plan outside the door, as I'm sure you all know, it's fascinating to look at. A part of his design featured a bunch of melded fairways, holes that were adjacent to each other. The fairways were melded together. They shared fairways, and they also shared bunkers. 1 and 18 is a really good example of that, where originally these two fairways were mown together, and there was 3 really spectacular bunkers rather than trees between the two holes that served the tee shots on both holes. Really, really, again, distinctive feature that again, to restore distinctive elements of this golf course design, this would be a spectacular visual. I know a lot of you in here have probably been members for years. You know the golf course like the back of your hand. But I'll tell you what, if this was ever restored to a dual fairway that was shared by bunkers, and you brought somebody out here and that was their first impression of this golf course from the putting green, they looked out on the golf course and saw these two big fairways with these beautiful bunkers separating those two holes. Again, very, very, very distinctive golf course feature that's unlike anything that I could point to in and around Toronto or even Ontario or even Canada for that matter. Secondly, we're trying to, we want to create maintenance efficiencies and economy in both renovation of the golf course and future maintenance. Bunkers are, Bill would probably back me up on this in a second. Bunkers are the most ridiculous thing that we deal with in golf course design and golf course maintenance these days. Bunkers are incredibly expensive to renovate. You know, anywhere between $5,000 to $12,000 these days it costs to renovate a bunker, depending on what kind of sand, what kind of liner materials you're using, what kind of grass. I mean, they're very, very expensive to renovate. They're very, very expensive to maintain into the future. So one thing that Bill's really challenged me on, and what we've tried to do jointly, is really analyze the bunkers and really determine specifically, looking at each bunker, is this particular bunker necessary to be on this golf course? Does it make the hole look better? Does it make it more challenging? Does it make it more interesting to play? Does it stop an errant shot from heading out of bounds? And we, you know, I do this on most of my projects or all of my projects, but if we've determined that a bunker isn't necessary to be on the golf course, why spend tens of thousands of dollars to renovate it? And why spend, you know, more money than that to maintain the bunker into the future? So a good example of that is the two bunkers that are short left and short right of the first green. The proposal here is actually to eliminate those bunkers and turn them into mounds, which serves similarly as hazards, right? If you miss the green short right, short left, you're still going to have an awkward stance, whether it's uphill, downhill, side hill, without the necessity, again, of spending the money that it costs to renovate bunkers and maintain them into the future. And then looking up 18, fairway acreage is also a big, big expense, especially when you're dealing with, and we'll talk about this relative to the greens in a second, but especially when you're dealing with annual bluegrass, Poa annua, very weak grass, especially going into winter. It's also very weak in the summer with heat. It's just a weak grass. But there's a lot of chemical implications, a lot of watering implications in the summer when you've got a lot of Poa annua. So Bill and I too have taken a big look at where we can reduce, you know, as much as we'd like to restore a lot of these shared fairway areas and melded fairway areas, we're actually looking at areas we can take away fairway without affecting play. And some of you have probably already seen that we've added some tees on the 18th hole. One of the reasons that the 18th fairway extended back, this hatched area is proposed to be removed. One of the reasons that the fairway was so far back is because there weren't tees adequate to accommodate the carry for a lot of golfers. So with the addition of some new tees, we're able to cut the total acreage of the 18th fairway back toward the green. So there's a lot of that going on throughout the golf course too, just adjusting the mowing patterns like that, which again also bring maintenance efficiencies and economy. And you can see down here as well on the green, the dotted lines indicate the oval that the current green is turned into, and the rectangle is suggesting that original shape and size that you saw in the historic photo be restored. Well, right now, I'm glad you asked that. The first couple of drafts, we had the fairways joined, as I just described. We wanted to restore it. But when we started looking at the total acreage of fairway and the financial implications of having that much more fairway grass, one of the things Bill and I determined is we could get the same effect in terms of bringing the fairway close to the restored bunkers without actually joining them up. So we can create the same effect without creating, what may be a larger percentage of fairway turf. And here's another important point in these bunkers too. A lot of times on older golf courses I work on, we see similar opportunities to restore features like this. And we'll want to restore bunkers like these, and we'll walk down to the area where we want to restore the bunkers, and there's a stand of 10 beautiful oak trees. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to cut these 10 beautiful 50-year-old oak trees down to restore 3 bunkers. In this particular case, if you haven't already, have a look at the trees that exist between 1 and 18. There's nothing there that any of us would miss, and those poor things are all in decline. So those are other considerations where there are opportunities to restore things where we would lose a beautiful specimen tree or a group of trees. I mean, we've kind of nixed that idea, but in this particular case, this would be a really great opportunity for all the reasons I just mentioned. Another big issue is traffic, and yes. Yep. Well, they'll have lips on them, definitely. On the flat ground that's there, there's a couple reasons why you want some flash. One is visual, especially off of 18, right? Obviously, you're up high on 1, so you don't need as much of a rise on the green side for visual, but you do on 18. And secondly, when you have a ball roll into the bunker, a lot of times the flash you have on the green side is actually to kick the ball back down into the middle of the bunker, so you have a shot and you're not up against a lip on a flat lip. So they will have some character. There will be some rise on those. I mean, it's not going to be 10 feet. It's probably going to be 3 feet. But there will be some flash sand there, yeah. That's the proposal anyhow. Another issue that we've looked at, again, you do 25,000 rounds on a relatively small property with relatively small greens, and there's a lot of holes where you have concentrated traffic, right? Here's the 4th green. It's showing some expansion. Right now, all the traffic, as you know, comes up through this really pinched area up to the existing cart path. Everything, all carts, all walkers, all push carts are always here. So one of the ideas, and we have some cart path adjustment, I'll touch on a couple more in a second, but one of the ideas left, while most of the walkers and push carts will be heading right. And again, these areas are very stressed turf-wise because of traffic. And again, just trying to spread a little bit of that wear around. Similarly on 12, and there's a couple things here on 12 that I'd like to point out. Right now on 12, you've got the bunker up tight to the front left corner of the green, and that creates a real pinch point up to the current cart path there. All traffic is heading here. So it's surprising that there's enough room along the right-hand side with reshaping this bunker, which I'll talk about in a second, that you could take the carts right and around the back of 12 up to the road. And also by shifting the bunker that's tight up to the left side of the green back, we open up a wider berth to get carts right, traffic left. And this really, a lot of times, some people, I don't know who in this room, maybe nobody, but a lot of people think about architecture as we're just trying to set bunkers here and there and do these things to just trick with golfers. But this is just a really good example of how we're thinking practically about the function of the golf course and about turf health, again, without affecting play. Another good example of bunker issues. This bunker here on the right side of 12 green, as you know, is one big bunker right now. Surface water is actually trying to get off of that green on the right-hand side. So the right-hand side of the green here holds water, which is never good, especially in the winter. That water that's held there turns to ice. Your poa annua is dead, right? Your annual bluegrass that you have on your greens is dead. And that's a big drainage issue. So again, you don't even change the fundamental nature of the golf hole. You simply split the right green side bunker into 2 bunkers, and you allow the water to exit the green between the bunkers down there. So again, you solve a drainage problem, you fix the bunkers, and again, the fundamental nature of the hole is not changed. The dotted lines is current fairway. So that's a current fairway line. We're talking about widening it. This is a current fairway line. And then this is the next point I was going to make. This is the current left side of the green. There's enough room over there once we disperse all this traffic that this is one of the spots that we can make the 12th green bigger if it ever came to the point that we were going to rebuild the greens or do a significant expansion of the greens for all the reasons I mentioned. Again, distinctive shapes, more interesting hole locations, spread wear, all those sorts of things. This is just another opportunity where the green could get bigger. What do you think there, Bill? On 12, you could probably get it 30% larger, something like that. You know, maybe pick up 3-4 hole locations, 30% larger. So I'm going to touch on the back nine here, which was my last golf course slide. Very interesting story here, actually. I mean, this is one of the fascinating parts of Cut and Field's history. The back nine, as I showed on that old historic aerial, has changed a lot. You know, before Gordon came in, 16 was longer, 13 was a par 4, 15 had a really cool green site up on the hill, kind of behind Craig's house over there on Gordon. The interesting piece of history that I want to mention is that the person who fundamentally changed the back nine by redeveloping Gordon, or developing all of Gordon and Dormy Lane, was actually Stanley Thompson. When he owned the golf course, he rerouted those holes to sell off those home lots. And Craig actually reminded me, I think it was Craig or somebody, reminded me of the first time I ever played here. You know, I played 1, then I played 2, 3, 4. Your front nine is honestly one of the best front nines that I can think of in and around Toronto, maybe even Ontario. 10's an exciting hole. 11's a cool little par 3. 12's a good par 5. Suddenly you get up on to the 13th tee. 14's a cool hole. Come back up. This whole area where 13, 16 are, you lose a little bit of steam in there, you know, in terms of how good the holes leading up to that particular section of the golf course are. So one thing I looked at, and one thing that's really, really big in golf course architecture, is any club I come to, safety is paramount, right? You're looking at the golf holes and you're thinking, is this safe for golfers to play? Are maintenance workers safe? Roads adjacent to the golf course, homes adjacent to the golf course. We're always looking at safety. So, needless to say, here's your current boundary with the 16th hole here along the left side of the 16th hole. Stanley Thompson's house, about right in here somewhere. And here's the current location of the 16th green. I mean, I've been in this business long enough, 2 decades, that the first thing in my mind was, boy, there must be balls flying into the homes left of the 16th green. So we looked at that as a safety issue and pitched maybe 3 or 4 different ideas relative to improving safety, because obviously that's one of the things that I'm obligated to consult on and advise on. But what we suddenly realized is that we could potentially kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You know, there's an opportunity to actually resolve some potential liabilities and some potential safety issues, and at the same time, really elevate the back 9 holes to match the front 9 holes. Really turn, the 13th and the 16th, and I'll talk about the 15th in a minute, but really turn them into improved holes. They really were changed fundamentally. They were very dramatic holes prior to Stanley Thompson's rerouting in the back 9. And again, 2 birds with 1 stone would really do some things for your back 9 on those 2 fronts. So that being said, you all know we're working on the 15th hole this spring. There's an opportunity to do a lot of things on the 15th. Ash trees had to be removed out of what was the right rough. All the ash trees were in decline and dying. And how many were in there, Bill? An extraordinary amount. 40 ash trees were down there, and ash trees all over Ontario, all over the GTA. Every golf course is removing ash trees. So the question became, how do we make the 15th hole more interesting? in the process of resolving the challenges that came with having to remove those ash trees. So what we're going to do is we're going to place 3 bunkers in the hillside off the tees. So tee shot bunkers in the hill left. The fairway gets expanded out to the right. And here's where it gets really interesting. The white pines that are existing, the grove of white pines, stay. They're out there now. And when I was here on Tuesday, it was the first time I'd seen the whole corridor with all the ash trees gone down the right-hand side. And it looks absolutely beautiful. You've got all the white pines up on the hillside left. It's wider down to the right. And then again, you see this grove of white pine further down. It's become a much more beautiful corridor, less cluttered. And it just looks like a golf hole. So anyway, we're going to make up that gap, so to speak, by placing 3 bunkers down the left side off the tee. And I'm probably jumping ahead of myself here, but the goal is off the tee shot, we're trying to add some strategy, right? I always say that golf is an inherently physical game. We've all got to get out there and tee the ball up and swing the club and hit the ball. But the game becomes way more interesting when not only do you have to execute that physically, but you actually have to think about the hole as well. And that's called strategic golf architecture, right? So the combination of these white pines downrange and these new bunkers on the left, what you're going to want to do is flirt with these bunkers off the tee to keep your best angle on your second shot. With the left to right slope running down the hill, if you let a slice or you let your push get too far, or sorry, I always speak biasly as a right-handed golfer, but you left-handers know what I'm talking about too. If you let your ball get too far away down the right, especially with more short grass down there, the ball's going to get further away to the right. Now suddenly, you've got this grove of white pines between you and the green. A new green is going to be built just behind and left of the existing green. And an important point to make here is when we talk about green surfaces, your 15th green, your current 15th green is not an original green dating back to 1931. I think it was built in the 70s. I think late 70s. That particular green sort of epitomizes all of the problems that you have with a lot of your greens. It was built with poor materials. It's very small. It's too sloped. It doesn't have a lot of hole locations because it's so sloped. So you can't spread wear very much. It doesn't have a lot of variety of pin positions. So we're going to try to alleviate all those problems by building, we are going to alleviate all those problems by building a new green back and left of the current green. So getting back to the tee shot, you'll find yourself down here on the right, and you're going to have to play your layup around the white pines or over the white pines. So there's a bunker that's going to go in on the left. So it offers some strategy, some things to think about in terms of how to play your shot, whether you're on the left side of the fairway or the right side of the fairway. And again, very strategic in terms of the layup compared to what it is now, where there's not really a lot of challenge happening in the second shot. And again, I think from a strategic standpoint, from a playing interest standpoint, and also from a functional standpoint, the new bunkers are all going to be well drained. They're going to have new sand in them. Green surface is going to provide enough area to spread wear, to offer a variety of hole locations. It's going to be new bent grass, which is superior to your greens right now, which are infested with poa annua, which again is a wheatgrass I talked about earlier. So I'm really excited about this 15th hole. I think it's going to be it's a good place to start with the master plan work that we're proposing, and I'm very confident that it's going to showcase sort of a bunch of elements that are in the rest of the plan on this particular hole. Well, we're going to start within 10 days, probably to 2 weeks. Yeah. The trees have already been removed. And the actual physical construction work's probably going to start in about 2 weeks. Yeah. So all that being said, again, the end goal is to try and place Cutton Fields in an advantageous position to deal with future challenges on the golf course. I said on Tuesday, I go to a lot of older golf courses that have way more fundamental problems than this place has. The basic routing of your golf course is great. That means in terms of the tee locations, the green locations, we're not trying to change heaven and earth. Bill and his team have a great tree plan in place, and they've been doing a lot of tree work. And when we say tree work, a lot of people's brains automatically flip to removal, but there's also plans for new planting. So it's a matter of getting rid of the trees that are causing problems right now, or in decline, or present safety issues. And once that all gets sorted out, there's a lot of great opportunity to plant good trees of the right species in the proper locations for the future of the golf course. We've looked at opportunities to increase the water storage capacity in the ponds, again, for the future of the club. If there ever comes a time when water issues and water access is a problem. Most of what has driven what we're proposing on the master plan, again, is very functional. It's a matter of turf health, addressing future issues that may arise. And then by doing that kind of stuff, we also have the opportunity, as I mentioned before, to make the golf course more interesting for better players, more enjoyable for weaker players, and more distinctive, more beautiful in a very, very unique way based on a lot of the history that's out there. And in conclusion, what we're trying to do is, in respect to Stanley Thompson and Chick Evans and Arthur Cutton and the wonderful history of this place, we want a golf course that functions up to 2019 expectations. You want turf health and bunker conditions and all that sort of stuff up to what everyone would expect in 2019. But we also want people to come here and know that this is a very importantly historic course that was designed by two very important people. And, that balance of history and contemporary expectation is really what we're trying to achieve with the entire master plan. So